My name is Sabrina Walker. I'm 28 years old, a freelance writer barely getting by in Charlotte, North Carolina. I always believed family was meant to lift you up, not break you down. But last Wednesday, an email from my brother landed in my inbox like a punch to the chest. According to him, I was socially unfit for his wedding. A liability who might embarrass him in front of his fiancée's high society circle. My anxiety, those moments when I freeze in rooms full of strangers, was apparently too much for their flawless day. I could have screamed, confronted him, or begged to be included. Instead, I opened my browser, booked a quiet cottage along the Outer Banks for the wedding weekend, and chose myself. I chose space to breathe, to heal, far from their judgment. What I didn't expect was karma to move faster than a coastal storm. One day into my escape, my phone exploded. 52 missed calls lit up the screen, buzzing like a hornet's nest, signaling chaos I never saw coming. If your family ever turned their back on you when they should have stood by your side, stay with me. Drop where you're watching from in the comments and hit subscribe for stories where justice doesn't take long to strike. Growing up as the younger sister of Zachary Walker felt like chasing a shooting star through a quiet Charlotte suburb. My brother Zachary was the golden child, charming neighbors with his gap-toothed grin before kindergarten. He'd race through our cul-de-sac rallying kids for tag, while I sat on the porch with a sketchbook, drawing flowers. Our parents, John and Jean Walker, beamed at his energy, baking cookies for his playdates, their laughter filling the house as he retold his day. My shyly scribbled invitations to friends often went unanswered. Mom would look at me, sigh, and say I should try harder to be like Zachary. By first grade, Zachary's birthday parties were neighborhood events, balloons and streamers spilling across the yard. Neighbors clapped as he blew out candles, Mom snapping photos, Dad grilling burgers for a crowd. My birthdays were quieter, just a few kids showing up, their parents dropping them off with polite smiles. I overheard Mom whisper to Dad that my quiet nature made it hard to draw a crowd, her voice heavy with disappointment. I'd clutch my new art supplies, pretending not to hear as my cheeks burned. Our Aunt Rhonda Hernandez, Mom's older sister, visited from Raleigh with a laugh that filled every room. She'd ruffle Zachary's hair, praising his chatter with teachers and his talent for making friends. "That boy's going places," she'd say, her gaze sliding past me. Once she caught me sketching alone and gently suggested I join the kids outside. Her tone wasn't cruel, just edged with pity. I nodded and stayed put, my pencil moving faster. Zachary wasn't unkind back then. He shared his candy and let me tag along to the park. But the gap grew wider, fed by his confidence, their praise, and my silence at family dinners. Dad asked Zachary about his day, hanging on every word. My stories about drawing or reading earned distracted nods, Mom's attention already drifting back to him. I learned to stay quiet, my thoughts locked inside my sketchbook, the only place I felt seen. School mornings showed the contrast clearly. Zachary burst out the door, backpack slung, ready to conquer the playground. I lingered, checking my pencils, dreading the noise of recess. Mom packed his lunch with notes and smiley faces, "Proud of you" written in bold. Mine was a plain sandwich, no message. When I asked why, she said Zachary just made it easier to show off. The words sank like stones. Aunt Rhonda's visits became more frequent, her stories of Zachary's charm carrying over the fence. She bragged about his spelling bee wins and Little League home runs, while my art contest ribbon stayed unnoticed on my wall. I overheard her tell Mom I'd grow out of my shyness, as if it were a phase instead of who I was. I started hiding in my room when her car pulled up. One summer, Zachary built a fort with neighborhood kids, their cheers loud enough to drown out my music. I watched from my window, sketching the scene, wishing I could join without feeling invisible. Dad called it leadership. I called it my cue to disappear. By third grade, I stopped asking friends over. Rejection hurt less when I didn't try. Mom noticed and suggested I smile more, be more like Zachary. I nodded, while my sketchbook thickened and my world shrank. That Christmas, Zachary got a shiny red bike, paraded proudly around the block. My gift was a set of markers, handed over with a quick pat. Aunt Rhonda clapped as Zachary rode past, declaring he'd be a star. I stayed in my room, drawing a bold sunset, my heart quiet. The pattern was clear. Zachary shined. I faded. And love in our family seemed tied to who could impress the most. By high school, our roles were permanent. Zachary Walker owned every room he entered, his charm polished into prom king confidence. I was the opposite, slipping through Charlotte's hallways with my head down, my sketchbook a shield against cliques and whispers. Lunch meant the library, sketching landscapes while laughter echoed from the cafeteria. Solitude felt safer than the spotlight Zachary chased. Family dinners became triggers for my anxiety. Dad would lean back and announce what he called my Sabrina moments, times I froze during presentations or stumbled through small talk at barbecues. "She'll get over it," he'd laugh, Mom nodding, her fork paused midair. The table filled with light laughter, Zachary joining in, mimicking my nervous fidgeting with exaggerated flair. I'd force a smile, my stomach nodding, wishing I could disappear into my chair. Those moments burned, stamping me as the awkward one, the family's quiet outsider. Zachary wasn't always like that. One spring, when I was 14, a classmate cornered me after gym, mocking my shaky voice during a group project. I froze, heart racing, words trapped in my throat. Zachary, a senior then, overheard and stepped in, his voice calm but firm. "Back off, man. She's fine," he said, brushing my arm as he guided me away. Later at home, he tossed me a soda and grinned like nothing had happened. Those rare acts felt like lifelines, small signs he saw me beyond the family script. But they never lasted. By the next day, he was back to dazzling friends at parties, leaving me in the shadows. Aunt Rhonda Hernandez only widened the gap. She began posting about Zachary on Facebook, her captions glowing with pride over his debate team wins or homecoming court nomination. "Future star," she'd write, tagging Mom and Dad, who liked and commented instantly. My art projects, like the mural I spent weeks creating for the school's spring fair, never appeared on her page. Once, I overheard her telling Mom my shyness was holding me back, her voice low but clear through the kitchen door. "She needs to put herself out there like Zachary," she said. I slipped upstairs, my sketchbook feeling heavier in my hands. School felt like a battlefield some days. Group projects were the worst. I practiced my lines alone, but in class my voice would crack, drawing smirks from classmates. Teachers tried to help by calling on me more, which only made it worse. I'd come home exhausted, dodging Mom's questions. She'd ask why I didn't join clubs like Zachary, who balanced student council and track with ease. "It's high school, Sabrina. Loosen up," she'd say, half encouraging, half annoyed. I'd nod and retreat to my room, my pencil sketching forests and oceans. Zachary tried to bridge the gap sometimes. One night after a rough day, he knocked on my door, holding a slice of pizza. "Tough crowd today, huh?" he said, sitting on my floor. We talked about movies and music, nothing important, and for an hour I felt like his equal. But the next morning, he was back leading a pack of friends through the neighborhood, their laughter loud. I watched from my window, sketching their outlines, knowing I'd never fit into that world. By my sophomore year, Aunt Rhonda's posts grew bolder. She shared a photo of Zachary at a charity run, captioned, "This kid's got it all, brains, charm, heart." Comments poured in from neighbors and relatives. My name barely appeared, and when it did, it felt like an afterthought. I stopped visiting her page. Being invisible hurt too much. School, home, online, it all told the same story. Zachary was the star. I was the background. Junior year, I finally carved out my own corner. I joined the art club, a small group of quiet kids who understood me. We painted for hours, talked about comics and indie bands, no pressure to perform. But family dinners didn't change. Dad's jokes about my nerves. Mom's sighs. Zachary's easy charm stealing the spotlight. Aunt Rhonda's visits still came with updates about his success, her phone always ready to post. I'd excuse myself early, retreating to my sketchbook, the only place I could rewrite my role. After high school, our paths split completely. Zachary headed to an Ivy League law school in Atlanta, thriving among tailored suits and networking mixers. He charmed professors, joined elite clubs, and by his second year was interning at a top firm. Weekends meant client dinners and rooftop parties. Mom and Dad called him often, voices glowing as they asked about case studies or politicians he'd met. They'd hang up and retell his stories at our Charlotte dinners, pride shining in their eyes. I chose a nearby state college, a quieter place where I could blend in. My days were filled with art studios and literature classes. My nights with a close circle of painters and poets who spoke in quirks and colors. Their acceptance healed parts of me I didn't know were broken. I graduated with honors, my portfolio packed with essays and designs. When I shared the news, Mom smiled briefly. Dad nodded. Then they shifted to Zachary's clerkship offer. "He's on track for partner someday," Dad said, tapping his fork, my achievement already fading. After college, Zachary landed a job at a prestigious Atlanta firm. His life became a blur of depositions and power lunches, flights to New York, photos at sleek bars with ambitious captions. Aunt Rhonda shared every update, calling him the family's pride. I scrolled past, chest tight, knowing my own path barely registered. Freelance writing for small websites and magazines suited me, letting me stay behind a laptop in my Charlotte apartment, shaping words quietly, safely. No crowded offices, no small talk, just me, my thoughts, and deadlines. Family gatherings became rare but revealing. At Thanksgiving, Zachary would sweep in, entertaining everyone with stories of courtroom victories or exotic trips with his law school friends. Mom hung on every word, refilling his plate without asking. Dad grilled him about Atlanta's legal scene. When I mentioned a published article, my voice calm, hoping for a flicker of interest, Mom would smile and say, "That's nice, Sabrina," before turning back to Zachary to ask about his next big case. Aunt Rhonda, wineglass in hand, praised his charisma, her eyes barely meeting mine. I'd excuse myself to clear dishes, my words swallowed by the noise. I tried to close the distance. Once, I drove to Atlanta for Zachary's firm open house, thinking stepping into his world might bring us closer. He was courteous, introducing me as a sister, but his attention stayed on clients, his handshake confident, his laugh booming. I drifted through the space, feeling like a visitor in his life, my presence an afterthought. On the drive home, I blasted music and told myself it was fine. We were just different. Still, the sting lingered, sharp and familiar. My freelance work found its rhythm. Clients praised my storytelling, and evenings were spent in local coffee shops editing drafts or collaborating with designers. I grew more confident in the life I'd built. College friends stayed close, trading memes and meeting for late-night tacos, their support a steady anchor. Family calls, though, were brief. Mom asked about my health, then shifted to Zachary's latest deal. Dad's texts were short and practical, never about my work. Aunt Rhonda's visits revolved around Zachary's rise, her stories painting him as untouchable. By my mid-20s, I expected the pattern. Zachary's life came with awards, promotions, and connections. Mine was quieter, shaped by words and small victories, but it was mine. I stopped sharing much at home. My updates earned distracted hums. At a cousin's barbecue, Zachary pulled me aside, asking why I seemed distant. "Just busy," I said, avoiding his eyes, knowing he wouldn't understand. He clapped my shoulder, promised we'd catch up, then disappeared back into the crowd, his laughter floating over the music. Our lives didn't just differ, they ran parallel, rarely intersecting. His name appeared in firm newsletters, his face polished on LinkedIn. My bylines lived in quiet corners of the internet. Mom and Dad updated his photo on the mantle every year. Mine stayed tucked in a drawer from a high school art show. Aunt Rhonda never mentioned my work, and I stopped looking. My apartment felt full, a sanctuary of books and drafts. Still, family felt like a door left half closed, their focus fixed on the brother who shone brighter. 3 years ago, everything shifted when Zachary met his fiancée, Kendra Flores, at a charity gala in Atlanta. Her elegance matched his ambition. She came from old money, her family tied to real estate empires, her presence commanding every room. Zachary, ever the charmer, won her over with wit and shared goals. They got engaged last spring, announcing it online with rooftop photos, city lights glittering behind them. Mom called me that night, bubbling with excitement as she described Kendra's ring and the lavish celebration planned. I listened, hopeful this might bring us closer. Zachary's wedding felt like a fresh page, a chance to bridge the distance between us. I texted offering help, writing programs, shaping vows, even designing table cards with my creative skills. He replied quickly, polite but distant. "Thanks, I'll let you know." I suggested coffee in Charlotte to talk ideas, and he agreed. But at the sleek downtown cafe, he spent half the time on his phone, fielding work emails and calls, mostly from Kendra. I nodded, hiding my disappointment, pitching a few ideas anyway. He smiled vaguely, promised to pass them along, then rushed off to a meeting. Weeks passed without follow-up. I emailed him sample layouts, clean and elegant, suited to their upscale style. His reply was a single line. "Looks good, but we're covered." I told myself he was busy, that weddings were chaotic. When Aunt Rhonda visited, she mentioned the guest list, hundreds of names from Kendra's elite circles. "It's a big deal for Zachary," she said, her tone suggesting I should understand. Mom gushed about the venue, a historic estate outside Charlotte booked for June. Dad added that this was Zachary's chance to cement his place in high society. I sat quietly, my coffee going cold, feeling like an outsider in their plans. I kept trying. I called Zachary, offering help with speeches, leaning on my writing experience. His voice was clipped, schedules packed, promises to circle back that never came. I suggested meeting Kendra, thinking a personal connection might help, but he said she was overwhelmed with fittings and tastings. My text to Mom earned short replies. "It's coming together." No invitation to be involved. And slowly, unmistakably, the old pattern returned. The one where I faded into the background. Still, I clung to hope, imagining myself at the wedding, cheering for Zachary, part of the family again. 2 weeks before the June wedding, the invitation arrived, unnamed. My stomach sank as I opened the cream-colored envelope, elegant script listing only Mom and Dad. I double-checked, trembling, thinking it must be a mistake. That evening, I called Zachary, voice steady despite the knot in my chest. "Is this right?" I asked, holding the card. He sighed, said he'd explain later, and hung up. The next day, his email came. Cold. Direct. I was socially unfit for the event. My anxiety, he wrote, posed a risk to the polished image Kendra's family expected. Businesslike, with no warmth, no apology. I stared at the screen, breath shallow, the words burning into me. I called Mom, seeking clarity. She admitted she knew, voice soft but firm. "It's their day, Sabrina," she said. Dad, on speaker, added that I should respect Zachary's choice. It wasn't personal. Aunt Rhonda texted later, saying I'd have other chances to shine. Her words hollow. I sat in my Charlotte apartment, the silence heavy, hope crumbling. The family I'd tried to reach was slipping further away. Their priorities were clear. I wasn't angry yet, just hollowed out. The betrayal settled, cold and heavy, pushing me to act. I opened my laptop, booked a cottage on the Outer Banks for the wedding weekend, and chose myself over their rejection. I packed light, journal, yoga mat, a few novels, and headed south. The drive was quiet, playlist drowning out the ache. By afternoon, I arrived. Salty air hit me as I pulled up to a small cedar shake cottage steps from the shore. Simple, with creaky floors and a porch overlooking dunes, it felt like a sanctuary. I unpacked, letting the waves wash over me, feeling a flicker of peace. This was my reset, my way to reclaim the weekend. That evening, I walked the beach, sandals in hand, sand cool between my toes. I sketched the horizon in my journal, lines jagged from lingering hurt. Dinner was a quick salad on the porch as the sky burned orange. No phone, no social media, just silence, the kind I'd always craved. The next morning, I tried yoga on the deck, stretching as gulls circled overhead. For the first time in days, I felt grounded, like I could rebuild from the inside out. The afternoon found me hiking a coastal trail, sun warming my skin, thoughts wandering, fragments scribbled in my journal. Anger, sadness, but also resolve. I didn't need their approval. Not anymore. Returning to the cottage, my phone buzzed wildly. 52 missed calls, numbers familiar and strange. My pulse quickened, but I didn't answer. I called my best friend, Tanya Martinez. She picked up immediately, urgency in her voice. Aunt Rhonda posted a final fitting photo. "You're visibly absent." A comment asked, "Where's Sabrina?" Rhonda replied, "She's not coming." Family decision. Kendra saw it, demanded answers. Zachary admitted the truth. She canceled at the venue, leaving guests stunned as chandeliers dimmed on an empty hall. Tanya got the details from a cousin working at the estate. I sat on the porch, phone in hand, processing. Mom's voicemails pleaded for me to call back, frantic, saying the family was unraveling. Dad's were clipped, gruff, "Fix this." Another unknown number, likely Kendra's, just my name and a pause. I didn't call anyone back. The weight of their choices pressed against the news. Karma had struck swiftly, but it didn't feel like victory. I stayed on the porch, journaling until stars appeared, ocean rhythm grounding me. I'd chosen this escape for a reason. Tanya's texts whispered updates, the canceled wedding, stunned guests leaving. I didn't ask for more. I'd spent years trying to fit into their world, only to be pushed out. Now their world was cracking while I was here, finding my own strength. Calls kept coming, but I let them ring, fading into the night. Back in Charlotte, the fallout spread. Tanya reported that Zachary lost 2 major clients, associates of Kendra's father. His firm questioned his judgment, trust shaken by the abrupt wedding collapse. The Charlotte legal community, tightly linked to Kendra's family, began distancing themselves, whispers enough to dent his reputation. Kendra, furious about the lie behind my absence, ended the engagement, returning his ring with a note he never shared. Her influential family pulled their connections, leaving Zachary scrambling to salvage his career. Mom and Dad faced their own reckoning. Neighbors, aware of the canceled wedding, began asking pointed questions at the grocery store, their stares heavy with judgment. Aunt Rhonda's now-deleted post had traveled too far. Screenshots circulated, fueling gossip about the family decision to exclude me. Mom called daily, tearful voicemails begging me to understand, insisting they never meant to hurt me. Dad's messages were sterner, urging me to talk, insisting we could fix things as a family. I listened to each one, finger hovering over the reply button, but I didn't call back. Their choice to stand by Zachary's decision had cut too deep. Aunt Rhonda tried reaching out too, long apologetic texts claiming she never meant for her post to cause such chaos. She said she only wanted to share the family's joy, not expose their flaws. I read her words, jaw tight, remembering every time she had praised Zachary while overlooking me. Her apology felt too little, too late, a bandage over years of dismissal. I didn't respond, letting her messages pile up unanswered. I stayed in the Outer Banks for the week, the cottage my sanctuary. Mornings were for coffee on the porch, watching waves crash, my journal filling with thoughts of freedom. I walked the beach at dusk, horizon wide, steps lighter without the weight of their expectations. Tanya kept me updated, her texts a lifeline, detailing how Zachary's firm had sidelined him to smaller cases. His name no longer whispered for partner. Kendra had moved to New York, her socials private. Her absence a silent rebuke. The family's perfect image, Zachary's charm, Mom and Dad's pride, Aunt Rhonda's boasts, had cracked, exposed as fragile. I made a choice. Back in Charlotte, I blocked their numbers, Mom, Dad, Zachary, Aunt Rhonda. Not out of spite, but survival. Years of chasing their approval, shrinking myself to fit their narrative, ended there. My apartment became my haven. Freelance work my anchor. Clients praised my articles. My creative circle planned a gallery show. Their support was steady, where family had faltered. I didn't need their validation to know my worth. I would build it piece by piece, in words and quiet moments. The fallout taught me something raw. Family isn't owed loyalty if it demands your eraser. Zachary's ambition, Mom and Dad's bias, Aunt Rhonda's carelessness, they had all chosen a facade over me. Their consequences weren't my triumph, but they were justice. I didn't gloat, didn't celebrate. I moved forward. My life no longer tethered to their approval. My sketchbook filled with new drawings. My stories found bigger platforms. And I woke each day knowing I was enough. To everyone who has followed my story, thank you for sticking with me through the hurt, the betrayal, and the reclaiming of my voice. Your time means everything, and I'm grateful for every moment you've spent here. The lesson: never let anyone dim your light to make theirs shine brighter. Family, friends, or anyone else, your worth isn't theirs to define. Share your thoughts below. Tell me about a time you stood up for yourself, or drop where you're watching from. Hit that subscribe button for more stories of resilience and reckoning. Let's keep this conversation going.